The Aston Martin Valhalla is finally here. And honestly, this might be the most important car Aston Martin has launched in decades. Not because it is the most expensive Aston ever made, and not just because it has more than 1,000 horsepower, but because this is the first time Aston Martin has truly stepped into the modern hypercar world alongside Ferrari, Lamborghini, and McLaren without feeling one step behind. And the crazy thing is, after years of delays and redesigns, the final production car actually looks worth the wait. The Valhalla started life as something completely different. Early concepts showed a smaller hypercar with Aston's own V8 engine, but over time, the entire project evolved into something far more serious. The production version now uses a twin-turbo 4.0-liter V8 sourced from Mercedes-AMG, paired with 3 electric motors to produce around 1,064 horsepower combined. That immediately puts it into proper hypercar territory. This is not one of those cars that sounds impressive until you compare it with rivals. The Valhalla genuinely has the numbers to compete with the biggest names in the industry. Aston Martin claims 0 to 62 miles per hour in just 2.5 seconds, and a top speed of 217 miles per hour. That is faster than most race cars from not that long ago. But numbers alone do not make this car interesting. We already live in a world where almost every hypercar has insane power. Ferrari has the SF90, Lamborghini has the Revuelto. McLaren is preparing even more extreme hybrid machines. Everybody now has huge horsepower figures and Formula One inspired technology. So for the Valhalla to matter, it needed something more than just speed. And according to the first people who have driven it, Aston Martin may have nailed the one thing that matters most: feel. That's probably the biggest surprise with this car. Early reviews suggest the Valhalla does not just feel brutally fast, it feels alive. Drivers say it feels lighter, sharper, and more natural than many modern hybrid supercars, which is impressive considering the car still has batteries, electric motors, and a very complicated hybrid system underneath. A lot of modern performance cars are almost too good now. They are so fast and so clever that they can feel distant from the driver. The Valhalla apparently avoids that problem. Aston Martin focused heavily on making the steering feel natural, the chassis feel playful, and the car feel confidence-inspiring instead of intimidating all the time. And honestly, that could be the difference between this becoming a legendary Aston Martin or just another expensive garage queen. Visually, the Valhalla looks absolutely wild, but it still keeps some elegance. That's something Aston Martin usually does better than most supercar brands. Ferraris can look aggressive, Lamborghinis can look completely insane, but Aston Martins normally still have some beauty in the design. The Valhalla manages to mix both. You've got massive aerodynamic tunnels running through the bodywork, huge vents everywhere, an enormous rear diffuser, and dramatic upward opening doors. But somehow, it still looks clean instead of over-designed. It feels like a proper Aston Martin hypercar rather than a race car awkwardly turned into a road car. And the aerodynamics are serious. This thing uses active aero systems inspired by Formula One technology. At higher speeds, different aerodynamic elements adjust automatically to improve downforce and stability. The suspension also changes depending on the driving mode and speed, meaning the car constantly adapts itself while you drive. That's what makes modern hypercars so different from older supercars. Old supercars were mostly about engine power and mechanical grip. Cars like the Valhalla are basically computers working at full speed underneath you every second. The car is constantly deciding how to distribute power, manage grip, adjust suspension, and maximize performance. And yet Aston Martin still wanted it to feel emotional. That's where the engine comes in. The flat-plane crank V8 gives the Valhalla a much more aggressive character than traditional Aston Martins. Older Astons usually had deep, smooth, naturally aspirated V12 engines that sounded classy and elegant. The Valhalla sounds sharper, angrier, and far more focused. Some people may still prefer the old V12 sound, and honestly, that is understandable, but the Valhalla sounds like a proper, modern hypercar. The hybrid system also changes how the power feels. There is almost no delay when accelerating because the electric motors instantly fill any gaps in power delivery. You touch the throttle and the car immediately launches forward without hesitation. That instant response is something drivers keep talking about after testing the car. Even at lower speeds, the Valhalla apparently feels incredibly urgent. It always feels ready to explode forward. And what is interesting is that Aston Martin did not just build this car for track use. They clearly wanted it to work on normal roads too. That is much harder than people think. Making a stiff, hardcore track machine is actually relatively easy if comfort does not matter. But building a 1,000 horsepower hypercar that can still feel usable and comfortable on public roads is a much bigger challenge. Aston Martin says the Valhalla was designed to balance both worlds. Early reviews suggest they succeeded. Some journalists have even said the Valhalla feels more approachable and confidence-inspiring than certain Ferrari and Lamborghini rivals. That does not mean it is slow or soft. It just means the car communicates well with the driver instead of constantly trying to scare them. And honestly, that fits Aston Martin perfectly. Because Aston Martin has always been about combining speed with luxury. Even when their cars became more aggressive over the years, there was usually still some grand touring comfort underneath everything. Inside, the Valhalla continues that idea. The cabin is very driver-focused, with lots of exposed carbon fiber, digital displays, and a Formula One-inspired steering wheel. But unlike some extreme hypercars, it does not look impossible to actually use every day. Well, every day for someone spending around $1 million on a car. Practicality is still almost non-existent. Storage space is tiny. Visibility probably is not amazing. Getting in and out still looks awkward. But compared with something like the Valkyrie, the Valhalla feels far more realistic as an actual road car. And that is important because the Valkyrie was always a very different kind of machine. The Valkyrie is basically Aston Martin, building a Formula One car for the road. The Valhalla feels more like Aston Martin, building a hypercar you can genuinely enjoy driving regularly. It is still extreme, but there is more humanity in it. Only 999 Valhallas will be produced, which means demand will likely stay extremely high. Because Aston Martin offers huge customization options, almost every car will probably end up unique. Some owners will create beautiful specifications. Others will probably make them look absolutely terrible. That is just how hypercars work now. But honestly, the biggest thing about the Valhalla is not the customization, the horsepower, or even the performance figures. It is what this car means for Aston Martin itself. For years, Aston Martin has sometimes felt caught between the old world and the new one. The brand made beautiful cars, but rivals often seemed more advanced technologically. Ferrari dominated hybrid performance. McLaren focused heavily on lightweight engineering. Porsche became the king of usable performance cars. Meanwhile, Aston Martin was still searching for its place in the modern supercar world. The Valhalla finally feels like Aston Martin fully catching up. And the timing matters because the company has been under financial pressure recently, while also slowing down plans for full electric cars. Instead of rushing into electric vehicles too quickly, Aston Martin seems to be focusing more heavily on high-performance hybrid cars first. The Valhalla represents that strategy perfectly. It feels like Aston Martin's bridge between the old era of loud combustion supercars and the future of electrified performance cars. And if this is the direction Aston Martin is heading in, that is genuinely exciting. Because the Valhalla does not feel like a company desperately trying to copy Ferrari or Lamborghini. It still has its own personality. It still feels like an Aston Martin, just a much more modern, aggressive, and technologically advanced one. And after years of waiting, delays, rumors, and questions about whether Aston Martin could actually pull this car off, the final result looks seriously impressive. The Aston Martin Valhalla may not be the absolute fastest hypercar in the world. It may not break every record, but it finally feels like Aston Martin has built a car that truly belongs in the top level of the hypercar world. And honestly, that alone makes the Valhalla one of the most important supercars of the year.